Let me have your undivided attention.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming and staying. So we're going to get started. Should we start by introducing ourselves at the table here? I'm Terrace. I've been a member here for about 4 years, and I've been an intern for about 3 years. Yeah.
Hi everybody, I'm Nate Miley, County Supervisor. Sorry, I'm just getting here. My meeting in Oakland went a little longer than anticipated.
Marvin, I've been a member of REACH for like 2 years.
My name is Margarita. I've been here since 2013 and I'm an intern.
My name is Michelle. I've been here since 2017, so about a year, yeah. And I'm also an intern.
Okay, so I know earlier you guys wrote down questions. If you weren't able to write a question down and you wanted to, ask it yourself, does anybody have anything that they want to ask, or if they don't have an understanding on something that they want clarity on? I'll pass the mic around.
Why do y'all think it's necessary to have someone else come take over?
So was the question, why do I think it was necessary to have someone else take over? Is that the question? Okay. Yeah, well, first of all, the REACH Youth Center, it's a county facility that we worked with the youth initially to envision and to create and to make a reality. And the county, a lot of county departments and others from the community, HARD, for example, and the San Lorenzo Unified School District and others were all involved in this effort. And at the time, we were trying to figure out who would be the best entity in the county to operate REACH. And the Sheriff's Department was part of those discussions. And I didn't think the Sheriff's Department, and Seth Kaplan, who's sitting right there, was my chief of staff at the time, we didn't think the Sheriff's Department would be the appropriate entity, nor the Community Development Agency for the county would be the appropriate entity, nor do we think HARD, the Hayward Area Recreation Department or District, would be the appropriate entity to operate this facility for the county. We decided in consultation with the head of the healthcare agency at the time, Alex Briscoe, that healthcare would be the best entity to operate this facility, particularly since healthcare helped me create the youth center in East Oakland, which is Youth Uprising, because that's in my district too. The county's got 2 youth centers, both are in my district. One is East Oakland and the others here. So we thought healthcare would be the best entity, but we never thought healthcare would be operating this in isolation or independent of all the other county family that has a responsibility for providing services to young people and providing services to everyone out here in Ashland and throughout the unincorporated community. So fast forward, I thought because the Sheriff's Department, through the deputy sheriffs Activities League had gotten to a place where they were more engaged in the community. They had more resources, both in terms of money, in terms of personnel, and they had more flexibility. I thought this might be a good time for us to make a transition from healthcare operating it to the Sheriff's Department through DSAL operating it, because DSAL is more embedded in the community out here. Healthcare has responsibilities all over the county, whereas DSAL and the Sheriff's Department, this is their area of responsibility when it comes to police services. So that's kind of the why at this time. But, you know, as we've decided at the moment, we're not making any changes.
So when you said the Alameda County Sheriff is part of everywhere, they're really not part of everywhere. They're only part of San Leandro and Hayward. So, but you said that they were around everywhere.
No, healthcare is responsible for everywhere. The Sheriff's Department is really just responsible for out here.
But you said also that they're out there too, like Oakland and stuff.
Well, let me have, if I can get the mic back. So, the Sheriff's Department, in terms of law enforcement, they're responsible for providing law enforcement out here in the unincorporated area, which we include as Ashland, Cherryland, Castro Valley, San Lorenzo, and there are other places that are incorporated too. Because out here, it's not a city. Hayward's got a police department, San Leandro's got a police department, Oakland's got a police department. So it's those police departments and the chief of police that's hired by the city council and the mayors of those cities that are responsible for law enforcement in those areas, in those cities. Out here, the sheriff, who is not hired by the Board of Supervisors as a county supervisor, I don't hire the sheriff. The sheriff's elected by everyone throughout the county. The sheriff has a responsibility for providing law enforcement out here where we're not a city. Then, in addition to that, the sheriff is responsible for providing the jails out in Santa Rita. The sheriff, and that's basically the sheriff's responsibility. Law enforcement out here and the jail at Santa Rita. And also there's a jail in downtown Oakland that the sheriff runs. The sheriff's not responsible for anything else unless the sheriff decides he wants to do more, and it could be a female too. So for instance, the sheriff of Alameda County also provides law enforcement for Peralta College District. Not required to, but he's entered into a contract with Peralta College District to do that. The sheriff also entered a contract with the airport to provide law enforcement at the airport, but he's not required to do that. Sheriff entered into a contract to provide law enforcement out at the Coliseum in the arena, but he's not required to do that. Just some examples. If you see the sheriff in Oakland, it's because the sheriff also entered into a contract with AC Transit, and they provide law enforcement for AC Transit on the bus routes and on the buses, but he's not required to do that. But the sheriff is required to provide law enforcement out here because we're not a city, and is required to run and operate the jails.
So you said that you weren't going to change REACH right now, but if you were to change it, why do you think that the police department is a good fit, and what would you be changing about REACH?
Another good question. The reason I was interested, and it wasn't just myself, but in talking with the healthcare agency head, Colleen, and Seth, who is working for me again, and talking with others, is what we've seen over the time is the sheriff, when the sheriff first became the sheriff, DSAL only had 2 people working in it, the Deputy Sheriff's Activities Lead. Now it's grown to have more than that. It has clinicians, it has deputies, it has other civilians working in the Deputy Sheriff's Activities Lead, which is basically a nonprofit arm of the Sheriff's Department. And so to try to better community relations, with the Sheriff's Department, law enforcement, and the community. We thought now might be a good time to take that next step as an innovation, as an opportunity to see how we could further improve engagement between law enforcement and the community, so that hopefully we could build a stronger model of cooperation and collaboration here in the unincorporated area, and that model we could use, not just us, but others could use that model across the country. So we're trying to set a cutting-edge sort of model to improve relations between law enforcement and the community. So that's kind of the reason why I'm very interested in pursuing this. And we know law enforcement and the community, there's been a lot of tension. And I've been working on that kind of stuff for the last 20 years. So if we can come up with ways to improve relations between law enforcement and the community, that's what we're striving to do. And that's why I was very interested in pursuing that. Right now, we wouldn't consider making any changes until, and that's why I'm here this evening and I've met with other people, until we have a sense of confidence that you feel, not just you, but your peers and others feel that that type of change would be helpful and not be harmful. And even if I don't think it'd be harmful, I don't want to do anything that I think you feel would be harmful.
The mic is on up here now, so you can come up in line at the mic right now. You have a question?
I was gonna ask, is it good? Hello? There you go. Now you can hear me. Okay. I was gonna ask that other than the relations between the community, how would this be beneficial to the youth to change ownership of the center?
Okay, well, we won't change ownership because the county owns the facility and the Sheriff's Department is part of the county and healthcare is part of the county. So we're not going to change ownership. All we would be doing is changing who's going to be responsible for being the operational lead for the county. Who's going to be the operational lead to take on the responsibilities of operating this on behalf of the county. So the reason I would think that would be beneficial is because from my observations, the Sheriff's Department, particularly through DSAL, when I go to a lot of meetings out here in the community, I go to a lot of events and activities, they're at those meetings and those activities. And I'm not talking about the officers in uniform all the time. I'm talking about being engaged, like Eat Night Live, like when we had Officer Vejeda, who was doing his performances. We had a big performance with him over at the Castro Valley Performing Arts Complex. I'm talking about things that I see them doing that I would feel that would be positive. Also, I think that it would be beneficial because if we can bridge the relationship between law enforcement and young people and communities of color, I think it's not just going to be beneficial for us here, but it can be a model that's going to be helpful, not just in this county, but throughout the state, throughout this country. Because everyone's struggling with how do we bring the community, communities of color, young people, law enforcement together to be more collaborative and to be more understanding of one another. And one other thing, what the Sheriff's Department's done, and they didn't do this initially, that's why we weren't comfortable making that move, but they've done it since then, over the last 5 or 6 years, is when President Obama was the president, he said law enforcement through 21st century policing needed to be more like guardians and not warriors. Police have been trained to be warriors. You know, go and take care of business, be authoritarian, do things like that, as opposed to being guardians and protectors. We're very much interested in seeing law enforcement become more guardians and more protectors. We still need law enforcement that are going to go and take care of business as necessary and appropriate, but how can they be more guardians and protectors and be in a operational psychology and mindset that's going to be seen by communities of color and young people as being more helpful than being harmful. So I would think it would be beneficial to reach to the communities out here because it's going to build our capacity and it's going to allow us to move in a direction that's going to set a new model. And I don't want to say something that I try to have to explain, but basically a new paradigm of operational efficiency and collaboration and engagement, not just for us, but for everyone.
Next question.
So, for one, would officers be walking around in here? And if they are, why? Because, like, Reach has already been back there, like Lamont, Vanessa, Ashley, Sam. Like, I'm comfortable with them because, like, they're like family. Like, I've been here since I was little. Like, they're family. Like, no one likes change like that. So, like, and, but to my question, would they be walking around? And if they will, why?
Okay, so what I've heard is that, well, let me back up and say, no, they wouldn't be walking around if that's something you don't feel would be helpful, that you would feel to be comfortable. Definitely they wouldn't be walking around in uniform if you feel that would be uncomfortable. But we need to try to figure out how we can show that law enforcement, the men and women of the Sheriff's Department or law enforcement, how they are people just like the rest of us, how they, you know, and how they can work with us and how we can work with them. And if seeing them in tactical gear, carrying guns, being in uniform, if that's intimidating, it's intimidating to me. If that's intimidating to you, then we wouldn't want to do that. So, but we would want to figure out how can we have them here in a more comfortable way that we can begin to bridge those gaps. There used to be, I think there used to be some type of opportunities for young people and the sheriff's deputies to sit and talk. I think that used to happen. I don't know if it's still happening, but try to have more of those sessions so that you would understand them, they would understand you, etc. But we're not trying to force anything. We want to try to do things in a way that's going to be methodical and transitional, but not in a way that's going to be punitive. And then I think you asked another question too about I think there was another question, not just the officers walking around here, but you had another question. Oh, okay, so they wouldn't be walking around here. But if they were here as in non-police uniform and stuff, they'd be here. And the why is so we could all get to know them better as human beings, as people. Well, you might disagree with me that you don't need to get to know them, but we are always going to have police officers in our society. And if we are constantly at odds with them and there's constant tension, that's not doing anybody any good. My job as a county supervisor and as elected official is to bring people together, to build community, not tear it apart. That's why I wouldn't force them to be here, but I would try to work to see how we can build community. So that's the why.
Okay, so I got experience with cops, like literally right there. Like if you open that and then open that glass thing, it's like I don't like being over there. Cause they put a gun on my friend like 2 months ago, and then a month ago they literally carried my friend Samantha, they told her, like, I don't like cops, they're very aggressive and like, no. And like having, like, trying to get to know them, like, I already got to know you. You was not cool, like, at all. I got trust issues. Like, y'all got trust issues? Y'all got trust issues? Hell yeah. Okay, like, so like, once you do something, obviously I'm not, no. Like, they did a lot, and you cannot deny that. Like, they did a lot. And I'm like everybody here, they're like 14, 13, 15, 16, however old y'all is.
But older kids not gonna want to be around the police, so why would you let them take over?
Like, it's like more deep than just Reach. Like, we all got backstories with the police. So having them come is like y'all just telling us to leave. So
Well, thanks for expressing how people feel. And as I said before, they wouldn't be walking around here. We're not looking to make any changes because we feel we don't want to do anything that's going to make people feel uncomfortable. But I tell you, I'm firmly committed to trying to improve the relationship between young people, communities of color, and law enforcement. That's my job. I've got to try to do that. That's my job. And if we need to figure out how we can make that happen. I don't want to force it on people, but we need to figure out how we can make that happen. Because we are all people. We all need to live in this world and this society together. And I can't address issues for the whole country. I can't address issues for the whole world. But I can try to address issues in Alameda County in my district. And that's my job, to figure out how I can make it better for all of us. So if they've mistreated you, or you've seen them act in a way that you think is inappropriate, we need to figure out why that occurred, and if it occurred in a way that was not professional and was uncalled for, they need to be called on that. But if it occurred because someone was acting out and it was deserving, then we need to understand that as well. So there's always two sides to a coin. There's always two stories, and it's my job to understand what's the truth and try to build that community. But so I'm not dismissing what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying, but I need to work to improve conditions for all of us.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a good point. But like, okay, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, for the DSL, or however you pronounce it, their activities is only from 11 to 18. Why couldn't it be for older, like 19 to 24?
I don't see why it can't be. I've never asked them that, but I don't see why it can't be.
Because I'm really into sports. And another question is, if they're going to take over, would they remove the counselors that are here?
I want to repeat this, and I'll keep repeating it. They aren't taking over. Healthcare is going to continue to be the operational lead, but we're trying to see how we can have healthcare work more collaboratively with all of the county departments that are responsible for providing services here, as well as our other partners like HARD, the school district, and other community-based organizations. But the DSAL or the Sheriff's Department is not going to be taking over. They're not going to even be in here. Oh, and the counselors, it's my understanding the counselors are going to be here for at least another year.
Well,
the existing counselors.
So everybody that's working here got to leave?
No. No.
So
No, they don't have to leave.
Counselors have another year, like, because there's someone like.
Are you asking who could be replacing them after the year?
Yes,
Okay.
that, and because right now, after a year and they leave, and I'm really comfortable with one counselor. And if he leaves, I'm leaving too. So I don't understand why.
Everybody.
Well, keep in mind, I've heard from young people in other parts of the community that they aren't coming to REACH. So I can't impress that upon you enough. I'm not trying to do anything that's going to have you leave, but I also want to try to do things that are going to have you stay and bring others in and also build a stronger community. I've got to try to do that. And as an elected official, I've always tried to do things that are cutting edge, always tried to do things that are innovative, always thinking out of the box. Now, everything I've tried hasn't always been successful, and there's some things I've wanted to do that I've had to back off of. But it's my job to constantly be trying to do things to try to better us all. So, but I'm not going to do anything that I think is going to drive you away. And the officers right now, in the counselors, well, first of all, the counselors that you have here, they can stay here. They'll be working with healthcare and be working with Kelly, who is responsible for the clinicians from the Deputy Sheriff's Activities League. These are the counselors who are trained the same way. Now, they might not have your trust, but that's what they need to do. They need to build your trust. And that whole effort needs to be figured out in terms of how we're going to transition to make that happen. And make that happen in a way that's smooth, and make that happen in a way that you feel good about. And that's my hope. And if we can't do that, then we probably won't be able to make any change. But I don't want to, you know, the status quo, things are going well, but it can't be said things can't be even better. And that's what we're trying to strive for.
We like you like this. Last time they was here, everybody left. So we feel like they should.
So I know it sounds like we don't have any change here at all, but there are new staff members who come here a lot, and they do build relationships with us. And yeah, I just wanted to say that, so it doesn't seem like, you know, we don't have anybody new, we just like one person. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Okay, I have a question, but it's for the interns this time. How come every time we have a list that says do's and does from the orientation? Now, one of the does were do not cuss. But how come every time somebody comes, we end up hearing that? And no matter how many times you guys tell them not to, why does it keep happening?
Okay. We're working on that. To be honest, we can't control what people say or do, but we are like working on our interns. I know for a fact they don't be cussing all the time. They probably cuss outside, but inside I don't think so. When they're working, they're respectful and they do what they gotta do. And you could also talk to Vanessa, you could talk to me, you could talk to some of the interns and be like, you know what, there's do's and does and you're breaking one of the rules. And then if they don't listen, then you can talk to one of the staffs and be like, they're not listening, can you talk to them? Have you talked to one of the staffs about it?
No, cause I thought without me saying anything, it'll get better. But as I kept my mouth shut, it hadn't.
Well, I think you should like speak up and say what you think, like what you're doing right now. You're speaking up, you're telling people what's going on, and that it will work out. We probably will have a meeting tomorrow, and we will be like, you know what, you guys gotta stop doing this and start doing this. So that's why speaking up will work too.
Thank you, Margarita.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Luis, Mr. Miley. So I have a series of questions, and I'll make them quick. You're saying that you're not imposing into bringing sheriff staff in here, but the first letter that you sent out caused a lot of commotion because it was implying that you guys were just going to come in here. So the staff that you're planning on sending over, are they prepared like the staff that's here that have to get a bachelor's degrees in psychology in order to be able to handle with these kind of problems with the children? Are they trained that way?
The clinicians, as I understand it, that work for Kelly are trained to work with young people, and the clinicians that Kelly would have here, once again, it could be some of the clinicians in the state that are here presently, that's going to be an arrangement that will be worked out with Lisa, who's in the Healthcare Services Agency, and Kelly, who's in the Deputy Sheriff's Activities League. In the letter that I sent out in December, I think, of 2017, that letter was sent out basically because that was the direction at that time I thought we needed to take. But as a result of, you know, I'd say at least 2 to 3 large community meetings, focus group discussions, meetings like this, a decision was made. with healthcare and the sheriff's department that we weren't going to make any changes at this point in time because I made that decision based on the reaction I got,
Right.
which was good. If I hadn't gotten any reaction, we'd have done it.
Just
But
go
by
ahead,
getting reaction and once again hearing from people, I said we can't do this at this point in time. This would not be healthy.
So is the ideal goal for you and your organization to have the youth here be accepting of that proposition that you have?
Ideally, that would be what I'd like to see happen, have the youth be accepting of that. And if that takes us a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, there's no time frame associated with that. But how can we get to a place where that's accepting and it's done in a manner that really helps to move the agenda forward in terms of police-community relations?
And now, building that trust with the community and the youth, what is the plan for these people coming in to help heal any kind of wounds that the youth have and the trust issues that they have with them? Are they also sheriffs, working sheriffs, active sheriffs? They're not sheriffs, they're just clinicians. So it's not sheriffs that will be here, so everyone understands that and gets it clear. It's not going to be an actual sheriff, it's clinicians, but they're hired by the sheriff's department. Now, does this mean that having them come in here brings in more money to the sheriff's department, brings in more money to independent people, maybe like such as yourself, or why that kind of move? Where do we want to heal?
Yeah, it won't bring any more money for me as a county supervisor. I have a budget that the county provides, and in fact, I could use more money in my budget, but all the supervisors get the same amount of money in their budget. Quite frankly, having the sheriff's department work in a more collaborative manner with healthcare and other community partners, and if we're successful at this, yes, we could attract more money from the federal government that would help in our ability to provide services, because if we're doing something that's innovative and cutting edge, and we've already gotten feedback from the philanthropic community and others that they like some of the stuff we're doing, it could potentially provide us with the opportunity to raise more resources, more funding for what we're doing and things we'd like to do in the future. So I'm not going to deny that that's a possibility, because people like to see things that are helping to build community as opposed to tearing community down, because everybody recognizes there are issues between young people and law enforcement, communities of color and law. It's no secret, it's recognized. So if we can figure out a way of bridging that and doing something that's really showing results, then yes, I think it's going to attract more resources.
So the question now would be, working with a clinician, how does that affect the sheriff's department? How will the sheriff's department get that information in order for them to have a conduct where it's not aggressive towards the community? Because a lot of people here are scared of it. I've been pulled over because of how I look. You know, they lie to me why they pulled me over. Stuff like that, and, you know, being profiled. So how will it connect those kind of gaps if you have the youth, a clinician, and then a sheriff, which is 3 different points?
Yeah, you know, that is complicated and challenging. I will not deny that. In the sheriff's department, we've got civilians, we've got sworn personnel, and some of the sworn personnel, some of the uniformed personnel are working with DSAL, but some of the sworn personnel work in the jail, some of the sworn personnel do patrol, some of the sworn personnel work, let's say, out at the airport. They might have a different mentality than the sworn personnel that are working with DSAL. So how do we get it to a place where all of the deputies that are encountering young people and communities of color are coming from the same mindset, the same cultural understanding? That's the challenge. And I think that's just not a challenge for us here, but it's a challenge throughout the area and throughout the country that we need, and that gets back to President Obama's 21st century policing, trying to make that shift. And that shift will take place as we begin to provide more training that's appropriate, that's culturally sensitive, culturally informative, and the officers who are police officers, they aren't of a military mindset, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's not going to happen instantaneously, but I was hoping that this could be kind of like a catalyst for helping us drive that agenda.
I see. Okay, thank you for the time.
Okay, so it's 6:30, so I'll take these last two questions, and then we're going to go over the questions written down on the cards.
So I know you said the transition wasn't happening anytime soon, but if it were to still be in play, would the counselors be replaced, and if so, why?
The counselors are not going to be replaced unless they decide they want to leave. I'm not even engaged in those discussions. Kelly, who works with the counselors and the clinicians through DSAL, through the Sheriff's Department, she and her counterpart, her peer in the Healthcare Services Agency, Lisa, who's in charge of the Healthy Schools and Communities, of which this program is under, she and Lisa and Kelly are trying to figure that out. And they would come up with a way of transitioning any new people in or keeping people here if people so choose to stay here. But we're trying to see how we can make this work in a more collaborative and wholesome approach and not have anything rushed and not have anything put upon people in a way that you feel was offensive. And Seth over there, he'll be working with them as well on this.
And can there be a surveying system in place for the youth that influences the decision of what is to be done with the management of REACH?
Oh yes, for sure. We would welcome that, so I could hear from you, because I really, like I said, this place wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the youth. When before this building was put here, the county was thinking about this property being utilized for a commercial establishment, like some type of store, some type of retail. That's what we wanted to use this property for. And the youth, and Hillary, some of you know Hillary and the youth from is it Mercy Housing over here, got together and they came and they said, we need a youth center. Can you help us? That's what they said to me as the county supervisor. Can you help us? And it was as a result of them coming to me asking, I said, okay, let's see how we can make that happen. And then we started the whole journey of informing the county, because the county wasn't supportive of this being a youth center. Some people in the community didn't want it to be a youth center, but we started that whole journey of the youth being involved, working with my office to make this a reality. So I always want to hear from the youth. I'm trying to build young people's voices, build your leadership, because people often say, you are the future. Well, you are the future. And it's my job to try to demonstrate ways that you can be leaders, both presently and as you continue to grow into a young adulthood and be both men and women in our society. So the experiences that you gather now, you can take those with you in the future. Because, quite frankly, I don't think it's acceptable. How old are you?
17.
17. I don't think it's acceptable, let's say, when you're 37, 20 years from now, we're still having these same conversations. I'd like to see things better between young people, communities of color, and law enforcement. But it's not going to get better if we don't try to make it better. And that's when I say the status quo. That's why we just can't sit on what's happening now. We've got to try to keep advancing the agenda. If you play sports, it's sort of like we need to try to keep football. We need to keep trying to move that ball down the field and score some points. And we might not be successful all the time, but we've got to keep trying. And that's why when people started coming to me and saying, this wasn't a good idea to have the DSAL and the Sheriff's Department take this over now, and I started hearing that, and it made sense because I heard it from people whose voices were like your own, young people, and others. I said, okay, you're right, we can't do this. We've got to stop.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? I met with you at the first meeting. So you said the department is collabing with health, right?
Yes.
Didn't you guys do that before, or no? Because I remember the sheriffs were here. Yeah. And I was wondering what happened with that.
Yeah, there was, all along, there should have been stronger collaboration, but I think it broke down, and quite frankly, I'll take some of that responsibility, because for instance, like La Clinic up there, they had concerns about the Sheriff's Department. I didn't even know that. other people had concerns. And as a result of me deciding to send that letter out and the reaction I got, it helped to raise a lot of voices and for me to hear concerns that I was not aware of. So the collaboration that I thought was in place and that should have been happening, it might have been happening, but not to the extent it needed to. So now we can take an opportunity as a result of that letter I sent out and all the pushback and reaction, surfacing all these issues and concerns. Now we can take a look at how can we look at all this and have some healing circles, have some reconciliation. How can we pull together and move forward with a better and stronger collaboration? And it doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, and it's because we don't. Another thing I always say is let's not let perfect be the thing that stands in the way of us trying to do something. Let's try to do something, and then we try to make adjustments. So the collaboration that was in existence wasn't not in the to the degree that I think it needs to be, and I think as a result of what's happening, we're going to be able to build stronger collaborations in the future. And then we're going to come back and reevaluate that. What someone said is, REACH has been here for 5 years. That's still relatively young as an institution. This 5 years is, really not a long time at all. So now that all this is surfaced, how can we take all this, look at it, all of you helping to be a part of that discussion with others, and take what we've learned, and how can we improve upon that and take REACH to another level and the community to another level over the next 5 years. And then we need to evaluate that again and see where we are. Just like I told that young lady, I'm not going to be the county supervisor forever. Maybe one of you will be the county supervisor. But I would hope if you're the county supervisor, I give you a better community then than we have now. And it's not to say things are real bad, but things could be better. And that's what I'm trying to do. Push it so we can get better.
Okay. My last question is, what are they not doing to the point where you make the decision where we should collab again? Or your first decision was to have the sheriff department operate?
Well, I don't want to say anything that's disparaging of the REACH staff, because they've done a great job. I mean, working with young people is a challenging profession. I used to run summer camps and work with young people at summer camps for quite a bit, young people out of New York, ages like 7 to 16, back before when I was growing up. So working with young people is challenging, but it's also rewarding, and they've done a great job. What I want to see happen is, I want to see REACH be not just internal to itself, but more external, more embracing of the community. I'd like to see, and I've talked to Pedro about this, having REACH be more engaged in the broader community as well. And one thing that they're doing that I suggested to Pedro and the staff is doing a good job, and others might be involved in it, adopting a spot out here and cleaning up and setting an example. That is so phenomenal. So it's that kind of thing. And then also seeing how we can improve the programming. If young people want to see a different set of programming, a different set of activities, want to see more hours, how can we make that a reality? And if the REACH staff can't provide that because of either their employment with the county doesn't allow for that because they belong to a union, and the union says they're going to work, let's say, 9 to 5, or there's not enough money to do that, or there's not the desire, can we bring in others that can do that as well, recognizing that, once again, this is not a private facility, this is not run by a business, this is not run by a community-based organization, this is run by your government, and your government's responsible for providing services here. Not just one arm of the government, but the entire government, but doing it in a way that you feel good about,
Okay.
and that serves your needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna go over here for some questions that you guys asked on the cards.
So just go through the questions. If the question was already answered, you can skip over it. Well, you can read comments too.
why are they involving the police with REACH? I don't feel that is a good idea because it's not serious and dangerous going on in here. That's a comment.
All right. This is a question. Why doesn't the Sheriff's Department want to create their own building that they can provide the many programs they say they have?
So, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Well, you're right. The Deputy Sheriff's Activities League, they're looking to provide a program and services. They did Eat Night Live in that site down at Eat Night Live. We're trying to provide that to the Sheriff's Department through DSAL to work on building more of a community station and opportunity site for activities that would be under the under the direction of a DSAL and the Sheriff's Department. So they are looking to do that. But on the same vein, we also want to try to see how we can build better relationships with the young people that are here and healthcare as well that is here and the other community partners that are here as well. So we don't want to walk away from this either. But you're right, we are looking to see how we can have DSAL do something else at some other location. And also that would help to maybe help me prove the model of innovation and try to build more community relations.
Thank you. This is a comment. Why are you trying to take over REACH? I think that is a bad idea because some people don't like the sheriffs, as well as if they were to take over REACH, people will stop coming. I like REACH, but if they take over, I will stop coming.
Once again, we're not going to have the Sheriff's Department take over REACH because I've heard from what people have said over the last number of months, that's not going to occur. If anything, there's going to be more communication, more dialogue, more discussion, and we'll see whether or not that's even something that'll take place in the foreseeable future. So that's kind of what my response would be to that.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We just need more funding.
Yeah.
It's a comment.
Okay.
So I got a question, and it says, what is the purpose of the change? Why wasn't it better communicated to the youth who will be the most affected by this change?
Yeah, the purpose of the change was because we wanted to try to see how we could now, after 5 years, and DSAL growing its capacity, how we could have DSAL become more of the operator here because they were more ingrained in the community. That was the purpose of the change. And what was the other part of the question?
Who will be most affected by the change?
And then the communication. The way the letter went out, the letter was supposed to go out, and then after that letter went out, the Sheriff's Department and the healthcare agency, they were supposed to get together and talk about coming up with a transitional plan. And they were supposed to have done that, let's say, in 6 weeks. So the letter came out in December. They were supposed to have done that by the first part of February. Then they were supposed to meet with me to discuss that transitional plan. And then that transitional plan would have contained in it the communications, how we're going to go about communicating this, how we're going to go meet with people and things like that. That whole transitional plan was delayed until sometime in March. It wasn't until March that they actually met with me. And by that time, the letter had been spread and people had received information that a transition was going to take place, so the communication wasn't done as effectively nor as timely as I had thought and wanted it to occur. It just didn't happen. But I'm not necessarily as concerned that it didn't happen perfectly, because as a result of the way it happened, I received all this feedback. There was a meeting with about 200 people. There was another community meeting with 200 to 300 people. There have been a lot of smaller meetings. There's this meeting today. So even though the communication didn't occur perfectly the way I wanted it to occur, it has produced a lot of results in terms of feedback and involvement and engagement. And if people know me, the one thing I like is I like to see the community engaged, the young and the old. I like to see everybody engaged. And this has produced an opportunity for all of you to step up and get engaged. And it's also what it did for me too, is it showed to me how much people value and love REACH.
Okay, so I have a question. And at first, I asked her to see if it's okay for me to say her name. She said yes. So Jessica asked a question saying, why does the Sheriff's Department want a bigger role for REACH? A bigger role for REACH.
Why does the Sheriff Department want a bigger role? And, I mean, I can't say this enough. The sheriff's, even though the sheriff is a white male Republican, the Sheriff's Department is looking to see how we can do things that are cutting edge and how we can improve police-community relations. And the Sheriff's Department is responsible for law enforcement in the unincorporated area. So the sheriff just can't come into Oakland or can't come into Hayward and say, let's do this, let's do that, because the sheriff doesn't have that authority. But here in the unincorporated area, where the sheriff is law enforcement, the sheriff has that authority. So that's why the Sheriff's Department was okay with me advancing the agenda of them taking on a bigger role at this point in time. 5 years ago, like I said, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, it was a total no. We're not going to do that, because I didn't see that the Sheriff's Department culturally was prepared to do that, had the resources to do that, the sensitivity to do that, etc. But now I thought, hey, we're at a place we can try this, and we can try it also based on the fact of what's going on in our community, in this area, in this state, in this country, in terms of the antagonism and the conflict between law enforcement and the community. We're now at a place maybe we can take this next step.
Okay, thank you for that. This is sort of a long question. So, what is the current situation? What is the reason on why you want another group of people to run REACH? What is the idea you have if you left the sheriffs come in? What about the staff that work here? Will they go? What would their opportunities be? What will you give them? What new programs will the new people bring to REACH? What are the changes they will bring? If the sheriffs come here, will current staff remain?
Okay. I tried to explain, Kelly and Lisa, who are responsible for the transition of any staff, will look at that and figure out a way to make this transition work. And they will do that by talking with the young people and others. No staff have to leave if they don't want to leave. We don't want to do anything that's going to push any of you away either. We want to try to do things through a consensus that we feel is going to be wholesome for all of you and for others who might not be coming to REACH to come to REACH. So we don't want people to leave REACH, but we want to have more people come into REACH. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. It's never easy. But as I tried to explain to all of you, it's my job to try. That's my job, to try to see how I can make things better for our community. And so we're not going to force this. We're not going to push it. But Lisa and Kelly have the responsibility, working with Seth, to try to figure out how can we move forward that's going to build a stronger relationship and a better relationship. And not, and we don't want to have, I was just talking with someone and I got the feedback that folks felt having the sheriff deputies walking around here in uniform with their gear and this, that, and the other was something that, as I said, people found intimidating. I find that intimidating. I mean, if a deputy or a highway patrol, and I've been stopped by the highway patrol, and I've been stopped by OPD, it is intimidating. It can be frightening. And if you say or do the wrong thing with law enforcement because of how they're trained, you could end up in a bad place. So how can we make this work and move it forward so that we are building relationships and community, and we're not destroying it, and we're not pushing people away? That's a challenge. That's a struggle. And I'm not saying it's easy, but that's what we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. And I'm prepared to come back and listen to you, talk to you some more. This doesn't have to be just this time and not ever again. And that's something there was a question about what did I feel went wrong, or what do I feel needs to be changed. Once again, I take responsibility because I wasn't talking with all of the stakeholders to try to get your feedback in the past, like La Clinica, like all of you. And I know I've talked to Pedro in the past about meeting with the Leadership Council. I'm meeting with you to hear from you. Having a town hall meeting with the young people, like we're doing this evening.
Okay, so this is the end of our panel. Do we have time for one more question? I'm asking Pedro or somebody. We do? Okay. Tariq, did you still want to ask your question?
This is the last question. I know everybody was asking how can we trust the PD, but my last question is how can we trust you? You know, a lot of stuff was done on our nose, like the petition that I never heard of. Like I never seen that petition, and the unofficial meeting that was like pretty quick. I didn't even know it was happening until like the day before. So I'm just wondering, how can the youth up here trust you?
Well, first of all, I'm an elected official, so people, I'm accountable to the constituents that I represent, and all of you are probably constituents who live in my district. That's the first thing. And I don't take not having people's trust lightly. I mean, I was on the Oakland City Council for 18 years. For 10 years. I've been the county supervisor for 18 years. And before that, I worked in the community as a community organizer, and I've worked with youth as well. So not to be trusted, that would break my heart if I can't, if you feel you can't trust me. I don't know what an unofficial meeting you're talking about, because I do have meetings with county staff, and the community's not invited to those meetings. I do have public meetings where the community's invited, and I've had a lot of public meetings. I do have meetings with like stakeholders groups to hear from them, and maybe at some of those stakeholder meetings, it's only the people who are part of that stakeholders group come to that meeting. And as I said to this question just a minute ago, this doesn't have to be one and done. I'll meet with your leadership council. I'll come back and meet with all of you in a town hall meeting type setting. I would honor and welcome an opportunity to do that, and it's just a matter of us scheduling that sort of thing to happen on a periodic basis. And then the petition, I had nothing to do with that petition. That was a petition that the parents over at Edendale Middle School circulated, and that's kind of what was the catalyst to make me decide to take that decision to make a change. The petition that the parents circulated over there, they brought it to me and said, and this is what they said, and I'm not saying it's true because I've learned a lot since then. They said the Sheriff's Department had been kicked out of REACH, and we don't think that's right. The Sheriff's Department. So these were the parents at Edendale, and our kids aren't coming to REACH. So you, county supervisor, who we elect, and you're accountable to us as well, you need to do something about that. I didn't circulate it, but they came to me and asked me to do something about it. And that's kind of what generated all this. And then Pastor Arlene, she circulated a petition, and she said, we don't want the Sheriff's Department here. And then the Edendale parents circulated yet more petitions. So that's all part of the process, the community process. My job is to listen and try to figure things out and try to represent all of your needs and concerns and do that in a way that's not harmful.
I just want to, I think trying to say that he feels there was like a lack of communication, and a lot of stuff was going on that wasn't, being asked from us. So there's like kind of this wall and a lack of trust. Not saying that you are untrustworthy, but how can you trust somebody when there's a whole bunch of stuff going on and they haven't even talked to you?
Okay. Well, once again, I apologize if I caused any uncomfortableness or unpleasantness for any of you. But I also say it's always good to have a little creative tension. It keeps us on the edge. It keeps us, stimulated. And if the creating tension has produced all of you to want to come and listen to me, I'm happy for that. Now, going forward, you let me know. How do you want to meet with me? When do you want to meet with me?
How could they contact you?
Pedro knows how to contact me. Seth, right there. Yeah. Lamont, there are a lot of folks who know how to contact me.
Do you have like an email or an address that they could like send a letter to?
Yeah.
Do you have business
I got
cards?
business cards. I've got an email. Most of my email, because I represent not all of Oakland, but East Oakland and Montclair. I represent all this area, including Castro Valley. I represent all of Pleasanton. So I represent a lot of folks, and I get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. So, and I've got about, I'd say maybe 10 to 12 staff. So everything doesn't come to me directly, because if it did, I just couldn't handle it. That's why I have staff. So sometimes things will go directly to my staff as opposed to me. But I can give you my email, but also the easiest way to try to get a hold of me is definitely to work through my staff. Pedro, he emails me. I get his emails.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can give you my email and give you my business card too.
Okay.
So we still have questions that were not answered, but I'm going to hand the cards to you. And then maybe you could, I don't know, address them in a letter, just to put other people at ease, because I know a lot of other people have these same questions, and just go over it, because, there's been a lot of talk and some miscommunications, just to make things clear. So, yeah, I think it's important for you to have these questions.
Sure. And I would just ask, do you want to have me come back at some point down the road?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let us know, and I'll take the cards and we'll respond to those in writing, and then you let us know when you'd like to have me to come back. But in the meantime, I know the other county staff are going to be working with the staff here, working with other staff, and working with all of you and the rest of our stakeholders, so we can build a stronger collaborative effort here at REACH that's going to be helpful for all of you and the broader community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for staying and coming.